Hey, good afternoon. Awesome. So Matt and I were talking a little bit backstage about the SwitchPoint and the convergence of music and maps. And one of the ideas that came out of our conversation was skills. Our students in Africa and Panama, around the world, and the youth that we've worked with Beatmaking Lab, they have mad skills. Okay, that's a slang term. It means they're very talented. And it's interesting. We went into the Congo. The youth there are very artistic. They can rap, they can sing, they can dance. But sometimes there's the technology piece that's missing. There's an opportunity through the tools that we provide that create a switch point for them and open up new doors.
Can we have the next slide, please? Anybody know who this is? Ever heard of Ali Farka Touré? All right. When you hear Ali Farka Touré or Fela Kuti or Oliver Mutukudzi, or do you guys ever wonder, man, I don't think Africa can be creative. Do you ever wonder that? You're like, hell no, man. These guys got mad skills, right? So this guy has in his hand, he has a guitar. It's a modern instrument, right? And all he had to do to create genius, and he's from a little town near Timbuktu, is give this man a guitar, don't charge him for access, hopefully have some cool mentors, and you have a badass, right? I mean, this is what this guy is, okay? Next slide, please. Same thing's happening now. Africa's ready to code. I took this picture of the Mountain Dew bottle. If you're programmers, you like Mountain Dew, gives you energy. The day I hired my first Kenyan programmer was also the day fiber was hitting Kenya. It was around the same time. And it's also the Kenyan I hired had a laptop from high school on, right? So the tools are there. Same thing we're doing with the Beat Labs. It's just about kind of giving us the modern tools, and do not worry about the future after that. Next slide, please. We still have a lot of work. Does anybody know what GitHub is? It's like a collaborative. Right now it's used a lot by programming, but increasingly, like the city of Chicago is using it to collaboratively edit laws and the legal text and whatnot. What we did is we took with some friends, we went through all the different GitHub users in the world, and we found out all the ones that had a location of African city or town, and unfortunately, it's only 0.12% of programmers in the world are in Africa on GitHub. There's obviously more programmers than that. It just kind of shows you kind of where we're at in terms of getting access out there. And I think that's a lot to do kind of what you're doing with Beat Labs.
Yeah. So I think this is a really interesting map. So far with Beatmaking Lab, we've built studios in Democratic Republic of Congo, in East Africa, and in West Africa, in Dakar, Senegal. And access to opportunity is really how we begin to grow this community of creatives and innovators. And imagine if we had beatmaking labs across the country, and there are students in South Africa sending the beats to MCs and rappers in Egypt, and people in Afghanistan sending beats to cats in Cuba. And so just kind of connecting the nodes between the creatives around the world. And that's really what our vision is all about. It's about, focusing on communities that can really take these resources, communities where there are already motivated, talented, highly intelligent, creative youth, and providing a tool that allows them to connect, to collaborate, to innovate, to communicate, and collaborate. So that's kind of what Beatmaking Lab is about. We appreciate you having us up here today. And
so if you want to help, let's release the mad skills, all right?
Release the mad skills. I like that. Thank you.
They told me the music would be fun. What do you think?
Awesome. So if I were actually approaching this, I would likely pass this challenge and this mashup to community members and health workers and technologists in Dakar, in Dhaka, in Nairobi, et cetera. But really, for fun, we're going to put out some what-if statements. And I'll start. So what if there was solar charging for cell phones in every stall with a timer, I think importantly? What if you could log the use of your stall and get data on the resources that you're providing for your community, if you're making biochar, for example? And then what if you got paid? What if you got rewards for that? So what if you got paid to poo? What if we incorporated sensor technologies so that every door handle, every lid, every hand washing station, and every low-cost hand sanitizer pump had an accelerometer? And all of a sudden, we could track all of that data in real time and look at what pairs with what. What if, and this is my last one, what if you had an LCD screen that was low cost, maybe ran off Raspberry Pi, in every stall that displayed updated health information that was updated by SMS? Because we all know we read whatever is on the stall, always. So why don't we use that?
Do I have to answer all the questions, or is that a quiz?
Yes.
I guess. Well, okay. So I will need your help to repeat them, but I can start by the end. I think we can, everyone spend a lot of time on the toilet. And I don't know you, but me, when I'm in the toilet, I like to read, I like to learn new things. And I sometimes use my phone. So you have to hide that you are in the toilet. That's always the trick. If you know texting, that's okay. You don't need to hide. You can just text. They won't know. And when I'm saying about phone, I'm forgetting all the what ifs, by the way. That's total improvisation. And when I say about phone, like for me, there is a technical connection. Actually, I was thinking that, and I mean, you're gonna guess where I was thinking about that. I'm gonna give you a clue. It's this part of the room. I was thinking cell phones use semiconductors. For example, the system we have developed at Caltech use also semiconductors. Not the same ones, not in the same way, but the physics, actually, of that kind of material is used in cell phones and in our system. There is also an interaction you have with your cell phone that you don't have with your toilet. So that's the difference is, you are proud of your cell phone. Who's proud of their toilet in the room? Well, not really. And then speaking about the interaction, actually some people are already thinking, there are some companies around the world who think about making more interactive human public toilets. And in these toilets, people will be able to listen to radio, listen to health messages. And these are already existing right now. So there is some movement. And connection between cell phones and toilets, for me, was actually something a bit already existing. And we still don't really know about it. So what about the what-ifs?
I think there's a lot.
What?
Are there any others? Any other crazy ideas?
So, Josh, what you're saying is that depending on the amount of deposit, we might get a refund.
Oh, about the refund. So I'm going to rephrase the question.
After we charge our phone, we can actually leave the place and get a refund. That would be hot.
Yeah, but then it depends if you do number one or number two, or both at the same time. So
And how accurately?
This would just be energy and biochar measurement, and you'd be able to get that on the fly and get a refund. That would be great.
Or if you had your own biochar delivered to your house to use in your field at the end of every month. How about that?
Exactly. That would be
Excellent.
a nice way. Well, thank
Success.
you, everyone. And I enjoyed being here at SwitchPoint. I think it was the same. We really liked that 5 minutes interaction, even if it was not really an interaction.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now we have a little talk on intuitive design. And we're joined by
Robin.
And I'm Emma, and we're from MIT's Little Devices That Could lab with Jose, who is the opening speaker.
Yeah, the Bigelows. They're both the designers, and I would love to see their house and what it looks like. So essentially, this we're going to be riffing a little bit about intentional design and how sometimes like design finds its own path, and there seems to be some forces that lead the creation. And maybe you can talk about a little bit about how people build medical devices and like how that evolves.
Yeah, so in the healthcare realm, a lot of innovation happens on a day-to-day basis because new problems come up that people haven't thought of before, or the equipment that you need to solve the existing problems just isn't available. So that means somebody may have the medication they need for a nebulizer, but they don't have the nebulizer machine itself, which pumps high-pressure air through it.
Yeah, so what we do at our lab is we try to make kits, like Jose put up on the screen, that include all the parts that healthcare workers in the developing world can use as a hackerspace to create their own medical devices. So we try to give them all the tools that they need to transfer a bicycle pump into a nebulizer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm talking from the code perspective. We're looking for parallels, and you have these toolkits of physical equipment, but sometimes as a software developer, you have the internet. But there's a lot of stuff in the internet, and sometimes it's a problem because people will choose the programming languages and the tools, et cetera, that they're familiar with, and start like only working with those materials. And I don't know if people do the same thing with your bins, where there's like things that some particular people don't choose and they don't explore maybe as much. And I wonder how you get them out of that rut.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the example would be like, say you were trying to figure out do a user test to see if people would use your device. Oftentimes, you don't get the best result from just showing them something and saying, is this something you'd use or is this something you'd use? You kind of need to give them the openness to explore actually what's good for them. Because often as the designer outside of the context, we don't know what's best for the situation. And it's up to the user to really know their context and really do a better job than we could do.
And how does one user like contribute onto the design of another user? Or is it like mine and yours? And
there's really a lot of collaboration and sharing. There's no reason that you wouldn't want other healthcare workers in your industry and in your community to engage in the inexpensive fixes that you have, because it serves your patients and it will help your...
But will somebody build something and then somebody say like, oh, but I'll add this? Or is it usually like they build something and then somebody else won't touch it? And
No, absolutely. If you leave things open that are like, plug and play kind of devices, someone can come and modify what you've given them. For example, if you give someone a bicycle pump and tell them it could be a nebulizer, someone could plug in things one way, like we did in our microlab, but then you tell them, no, you go ahead and modify the parts, and someone can cut up the bicycle pump and it actually produces a better result. Yeah. Do you see the same thing in code?
Well, in code it happens all the time. People do what they call it's like branches of forks. You have your product, which is the source code, and people actually have the magic of copying. So I could actually copy your object, and then I could change it the way I want it without disrupting yours. And then I can actually choose pieces that I think you might find valuable and say, hey, why don't you pull these into yours? And you go like, and like add them to your product. And that's how open source kind of evolves in a way, and everybody can have their own copy. One of the things that happens, though, is that you have to ask yourself, why are people making a copy, and what are the forces guiding them? Sometimes you have some branches, different copies that happened, being really driven by user needs and design, and other copies like really driven by some engineering guy being bored and thinking he could do something better. So I'm wondering also if you get examples of, even though people are doing things for themselves, sometimes they might get fixating on fixing an entertaining problem rather than a useful problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That happens. For example, like when you're out of context and you have engineers who like to over-engineer a device to work in all temperatures or in all levels of humidity, they'll spend a lot of time on those parameters that don't matter for a certain user.
Okay, good. And I ran out of the question I was going to ask. So I actually had another example that happens in architecture, which is, and I think it also applies in design. There's this book called The Timeless Way of Building by Christopher Alexander, and he discovered that the elements of a building that makes it habitable and alive are actually not made of physical characteristics like the height of a wall or the material of the floor, but rather by the emotions that different rooms and different environments elicit. And what we see in our digital tools is that the ones that stay alive and keep being used are the ones that the users themselves can continuously adapt to their own needs. So that sense of pride that comes in building something actually means that they'll probably continue to evolve it, even though it might become obsolete in its first version. I wondered, are people using these devices for a long time, and have you been able to keep like a history of how people invented things over time, or is that a plan? I wonder if you can build a genealogy of field worker inventions.
Yeah, that's a great plan. Well, for example, we have these kits that are full of different pieces that can be put together to become diagnostic devices. And actually, that comes out of seeing nurses in developing country setting already doing that, repurposing those strips that you see that have about 12 spots on them. They're so resource limited that they've been cutting them up and already kind of like redistributing that system. Yeah, so we see that.
All right. And I have one final question, which I think is important. There's a lot of folks that really value user-centric approaches, but sometimes we stop short of saying like, well, what are your requirements? Tell me your requirements, I'll interpret them and build something for you. Is that an effective design path, or has design moved beyond that? And what is like a more optimal way?
Well, the problem with that is people's needs change over time, and if you ask them what their need is today, that may not be what their need is next week, and it's hard to really think about what the best way to interpret every possible scenario is. So if you instead give them the tools and way to make their own design to fit the individual circumstance that they're in for that day, that week, that's a much better approach than asking them what their need is on Wednesday, when that may be totally different than what their need is on Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, do you ask people's requirements in coding?
You do, but it's better when it's agile, when you keep doing that. And being agile will also have to start going away. But thank you, everybody. And
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. This is great.